When Nelson Mandela was made president of the post-apartheid South Africa in 1994, I was sent over by the Australian Council of Trade Unions to work for COSATU, our counterparts in Johannesburg. There was of course a lot of excitement with the new South Africa, the first new non-racial constitution, and the links between Australia, particularly the ACTU and South Africa, were very strong. But as the euphoria of Mandela's inauguration left, a lot of high expectations were brought forth, and there was a fear expressed by President Nelson Mandela himself that now that apartheid was over, the rest of the world would forget Africa, in his words. And he asked that Australia and the rest of the world didn't forget Africa. In fact, most of the activity in Africa at the time was mainly by rock stars, mainly by Bob Geldof with Live Aid, and later U2's Bono, who's worked tirelessly to reduce poverty in Africa. Most of it is about raising money, giving aid, reducing poverty. Not much of it was about economic capacity. Not much of it was about improving trade links, liberalising trade internationally so Africa could get an opportunity, and also building capacity for Africa's young population. Some years on now, we haven't forgotten Africa. In fact, Africa itself has surprised on the upside. According to new data from the IMF, some of the key African nations are now registering quite impressive growth rates. For instance, the Democratic Republic of the Congo is 6.5%, Zambia registered 6.8%, Nigeria 6.8%, Mozambique 7.5%, and even Ethiopia, which has been so struck by famine, achieved 8.5% growth in the IMF forecast. And lastly, Ghana has been a very successful country in West Africa, growing at 13.7%. We've found that Australia too has focused its energies on Africa, particularly in the mining and exploration sector. There's now 200 mining companies in Africa investing around $45 billion Australian. In addition, in areas such as training, education and infrastructure, there's around 4,000 Australian exporting companies now exporting to Africa with two-way trade worth around $5 billion. In fact, most companies now in Perth that are registered on the Australian Stock Exchange also have some listings in Africa and very, very strong investments, not only in the mining sector but also in the education and infrastructure sectors that pertain to the exploration sector. Also, after the end of apartheid and the lifting of sporting bans, we now see closer links, particularly with South Africa in cricket and rugby. Many Australian companies also provided a lot of the infrastructure and a lot of the media and entertainment support to the FIFA World Cup in South Africa a couple of years ago. And increasingly, Australia's interest in soccer, in football, has allowed more sporting ties with the rest of the continent, given the growth of football on that continent. Even in the Australian game of Aussie rules, there's been strong involvement now in South Africa. Kevin Sheedy, the sporting footy legend, international ambassador for the AFL, now coach of Greater Western Sydney Giants, took a tour of South Africa with the famous Indigenous footballer Michael Long. They did particular work in the townships to reduce drug abuse and smoking, and basically set up a South African equivalent, Footy Wild, of the Auskick program. Around 2,500 AFL players played in South Africa in 2006. Now that number's grown to around 7,000 players, so there's quite a lot of participation. We're now seeing more and more African footballers in the AFL, and indeed we're seeing the Austrade offices in Ghana, in Kenya and also in South Africa making contributions to corporate social responsibility in areas such as sport and recreation as well as education. In fact, on my last visit to South Africa, I noticed the Fremantle Dockers playing a very important role at Indaba, at one of the major mining conferences, and also they were in the townships trying to support a lot of young people who'd gone wayward through alcohol and smoking. The Fremantle Dockers, because of the West Coast Eagles' grip on Perth's corporate scene, actually were gaining sponsorship from South African mining companies, and they were doing their bit too to build capacity in townships in South Africa, and also doing their bit to invest in education and infrastructure in some of the poorest parts of South Africa. It made me think that many Australian companies like the Fremantle Dockers actually were doing a lot for Africa in building education, in building human capital, and in building capacity, particularly in the poorest areas. And it made me think that access to education and supporting trade between Australia and Africa could actually in many ways do just as much as the endless rock concerts we've had to raise aid money that was started by Bob Geldof and also continued by Bono. So perhaps when it comes to affecting real poverty alleviation, building capacity, perhaps Australian companies and Australians should be a little bit more like the Fremantle Dockers and a little bit less like Bono in the years ahead.